I'm Alex Michelson. This week on The Issue Is, Democratic Congressman Khanna from Silicon Valley on AI, childcare, and his future. Then, political analyst Chris Matthews on how Democrats adjust after terrible poll numbers for President Biden.
Broadcasting across California, you're watching The Issue Is.
And welcome to The Issue Is. I'm Alex Michelson, and with us is the Democratic congressman representing Silicon Valley, Khanna, in the House for the first time. Congressman, good to see you. Welcome to The Issue Is.
Alex, great to be on set. As I was telling you, you've become the brand name in California now. So every California congressperson has to pay a visit.
Oh, my God. All right, well, there's the promo. Why don't we just stop now? There's no reason to keep going. All right, thank you for that. Nice to see you here. Let's talk about what I think is one of the most interesting issues right now. Artificial intelligence. You are the congressman representing Silicon Valley. This big question is, how do we regulate it? Can Congress even regulate this? Is the genie out of the bottle? What are your thoughts? Where are we at on that?
Well, first, let's understand what it is. It's taking a lot of big data and it's statistics that then gives you a probability of outcome. I'll make some news. I'm in the process of actually putting together a council of industry leaders, ethicists, to help inform some of the principles for the Congress. Because right now, we have a technological literacy challenge in the Congress. But then we need to look at how it can be used for positive and how we can make sure that the data sets are accurate that are being put in, that it's not misused, and needs smart regulation.
So who are you talking about on that council, and what are you going to be saying to Congress?
Well, I can't make all the news, so, but we will have a council that's going to have some of the industry leaders. It's going to have the ethicists. It's going to have a combination of think tanks and industry. And my task, I'm going to charge them with saying, look, help the United States come up with policies that are going to use the benefits of AI. Let me give you a quick example. You go to the ER, unfortunately, or someone you know goes to the ER. You have symptoms. The doctor says, here are the symptoms. What could it be? That's augmenting a doctor's ability to treat. And make sure that you have the proper regulation so it's not being abused with misinformation and all the negative things. And they're going to, I think, help inform us.
And are you suggesting that some of the 60, 70-year-old, 80-year-olds in Congress might need a little bit of education on this?
You can put it that way. I'm just saying, I don't think it's even a fully just an age thing. I think, unfortunately, Congress is not up to speed with technology. I've said every member should visit at least for a few days my district.
Right, which is the hub of so much technology. And technology is also at the heart of so many strikes that we're seeing throughout California and throughout the country. We call this the summer of strikes, hot labor summer. What do you see as the role of government in potentially ending some of these strikes?
Well, technology isn't a license for exploitation. So let's look at the writers' strike and why they're striking. When you used to have a popular show, Friends or Seinfeld, and it used to have reruns, the writers used to make money of it being popular. Now, you could have a hit like Ted Lasso, and if you're a writer for that, you don't get the residuals. You don't get anything more. And all the writers are saying is, tell us how many people are streaming it, and pay us based on that. And let's not replace all entertainment with AI, because that will be the dumbing down of entertainment. I think both are very reasonable.
One of the most interesting things about you is that you actually work with the other side, because so many people in Congress don't. And you go on Fox News a lot, you talk to Republicans, and one of your closest friends in Congress is Nancy Mace, who is a Republican congresswoman. We've got a photo of her. The two of you have formed what you call the Child Care Caucus. You're trying to get some bipartisan legislation done to help people with child care issues. What specifically are you looking for, and do you have the votes to get that done?
Well, 86% of Americans think there should be some government support for child care. It's almost $10,000 a year of cost. It's almost, it used to be the cost of college education. Now college has gone much higher. So what we're saying is have some government support to make child care more affordable. Let's have paid the child care workers more. And let's not have this child care cliff where at the end of September, 70,000 child care centers may lose their funding because the funding runs out from the American Rescue Plan.
So obviously there's a Democratic Senate, there's a Republican House. What are you hearing? Are there the votes to do what you're talking about?
There's a possibility of at least avoiding the child care cliff and getting more funding for child care. I want childcare $10 a day, $2,400 a year for working and middle-class families. We're not going to get that without the president and a Democratic House and Senate. But what Nancy Mace and I can do is make sure that the funding doesn't dry up and that we increase some support for families.
Another big story that we saw in Washington this week is the health of Senator Mitch McConnell, which is sad to see him freeze up. He insists that he's okay. The Capitol physician insists that he's okay and he's going to keep in his job. But this reminded a lot of folks of Senator Dianne Feinstein and concerns about her health. You were the first and so far the only Democratic member of the House to call for her to resign. Do you stand by that now?
I do. There have been a few others. I think I may be the only one in California. Look, I have a tremendous amount of admiration and respect for Senator Feinstein. And ultimately, of course, it's her decision. And I have a respect for her staff, who's doing a tremendous job. But I said what I believe is the right thing as a California voter, and I stand by that.
What did people say to you behind the scenes when you made that comment about Feinstein?
Well, there were quite a few people who agreed, who said, you know, this is something that needs to be done. But many said, look, it's her decision ultimately, which I agree with. And I've expressed my viewpoint, but I don't want to beat a dead horse in that I have tremendous admiration for her, respect for her. Sure. I've made my point. And now it's for her to decide. You
know, behind the scenes, there are also Democrats who quietly, not in front of the camera, express concerns about Joe Biden's age and are concerned about this concept that the president would be 86 years old at the end of his next term. Are you concerned about that?
Well, I believe he's the best candidate to win, and I think he is fully there to be able to govern. Now, to say that age is not a factor would be defying common sense. Obviously, that's one of the factors people will consider. But when they look at what he has delivered, when they look at the experience that he's had to lead on foreign policy, when they look at the fact that he is the best candidate to carry Pennsylvania, Michigan, and the Midwest, I think that the party will rally around him.
We know you were in New Hampshire recently. Should we read into that you may be interested someday in running for president?
I was there. I'm on the President's Advisory Committee, and I was there making the case for the president. If folks look at the speech, they'll see me touting President Biden's record.
You made some news this week. You were on with Hugh Hewitt on the radio,
yes.
and he asked you about the possibility if Joe Biden wasn't running and Governor Newsom was running, you said that Newsom may not be the strongest candidate. What did you mean by that?
Well, look, I like the governor. I've supported the governor twice. All I meant was it's premature. I mean, Hewitt was basically thinking that there was going to be some conspiracy on our side to supplant Biden with Governor Newsom. And I don't think Governor Newsom believes that.
Of course, he says he never, ever has even thought about running for president.
Every person who has run for dog catcher has thought of being president of the United States.
Okay, well, there you go. There's an honest answer from you, and that would, I guess, include you as well. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about you because maybe you will run for president one day. This is a really interesting story, though. Let's take a look at a picture of your grandfather and you. And your grandfather, remarkable man, served in behind bars with Mahatma Gandhi in India. And you recently led a congressional delegation to India. Can you describe the emotions of what that must have felt like for you and to be thinking about your grandfather there?
Well, it was an incredible moment. I'm the co-chair of the India caucus. I got to lead with 8 members of Congress, and we were there on India's Independence Day, August 15th. And, of course, my grandfather had been in jail twice in the 1930s and 1940s fighting for India's independence. And I thought, wow, what a moment. You know, Alex, when my parents came to this country, they would not have been able to get a meeting with a staff member to a member of Congress. Today, we've got 5 South Asians in Congress. When people talk about the country and the lack of hope, I say, look at the Congress and the young people being elected. It gives me so much hope in the future of this nation.
What was the most important lesson you learned from your grandfather?
You know, he had a view on the nobility of politics, the sense that, I mean, he spent 15 years in this freedom movement. He was there with Gandhi, with Nehru, and they changed the destiny of a people. When I talk to young people, it's the one thing I try to convey. Don't just think everyone is corrupt. Don't just think all the institutions are broken. There is still a nobility to American politics. And that was what ultimately my grandfather taught me about politics.
For viewers here in Los Angeles, they will, of course, recognize the former mayor of Los Angeles is now the ambassador to India. Not easy for him to get that job. Now he's there.
Doing a fabulous job.
What was that like? Tell us about how Eric Garcetti's doing and seeing him up close. What was that like?
Well, I went to Indian Independence Day in a suit and jacket, and there is Garcetti, our ambassador, in the Nehru jacket. And I said, Eric, you got it. I mean, he is friends with all of the Indian government officials. He's treading the line between the strategic relationship and pluralism. He's doing a fabulous job. I'm so proud of the president for putting in there. I'm proud of him for persevering through the Washington process. He's making a difference.
You know, we like to play music on this show. So last time you were on, you said Bruce Springsteen was your favorite artist.
Yes.
Was my favorite artist. But I asked about what's your favorite song of all time.
Right.
And you chose Ebony and Ivory.
I got so much heat for that in high school, but I'm sticking with it. Now that I'm in Congress, they used to say it's sappy, it's saccharine, you know, it's got, you know, there goes Roe again with Ebony and Ivory. All my high school friends used to give me a hard time for this, but I'm sticking to it.
What is it about that song?
Well, one, I just like the melody.
Yeah.
Two, if you remember, it was the only song that was banned in South Africa during apartheid for Paul McCartney. And it's a great song about simply people coming together and living an aspirational, a bit utopian, but I like it.
All right, so we go to break with Ebony and Ivory. Up next, Chris Matthews is with us, and here's the congressman's chance to rock out to that saccharine song.
Live together in perfect harmony.
Filing deadlines haven't passed. President Biden doesn't run. Why shouldn't we consider you a likely candidate?
I think the vice president is naturally the one lined up, and the filing deadlines are quickly coming to pass. And I think we need to move past this notion that he's not going to run. President Biden is going to run, and looking forward to getting him reelected.
Governor Newsom on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd this weekend, expressing support for President Biden and, notably, for Vice President Harris. But there have been a series of tough polls for President Biden. 67% of Democrats telling CNN they want a different nominee other than Joe Biden. Their biggest concern, his age. Recent poll from the Wall Street Journal shows 73% of Americans say the president is too old to run for re-election. Joining us now to discuss this and more is author and political commentator Chris Matthews. Welcome to The Issue Is.
It's great to be here out west, out in Los Angeles.
Yes, you're joining us from Nantucket. We like seeing relaxed Chris. And if you give me a moment,
it is very relaxed up here.
I'm gonna fanboy for 1 second. You are one of the main reasons I got into this business. I watched Hardball every day, the Chris Matthews Show every weekend. Here are some of the books that I have that you wrote. So thank you for the inspiration, including Hardball, the best. And so it means so much to have you on this show. Thank you for everything.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
All right, so let's talk about President Biden. And when you look at those numbers, which are not good, should the Democrats actually be looking at a different nominee? Would somebody else potentially be stronger?
Trump looks strong. And Trump would probably beat, unless somebody really got their act going, anybody else but Biden. Biden has incumbency. He has a pretty good economy on demand in terms of jobs. Difficult with regard to inflation, of course. In fact, inflation will be in the headline if he loses. That's what I can tell you right now. If he loses to Trump, it'll say inflation did it to him. And he could easily lose this election. Very close right now. Pennsylvania, if the country's even, Pennsylvania's lost. And as for Gavin Newsom, he reminds me of a guy in the on-deck circle in a baseball game. But unless they go to the plate and make it a little more difficult for the guy at the plate, they're not going to get the bat. And that's what they got to think about this. And this thing about pushing Kamala Harris, well, that's nice. That's appropriate. She is VP. But does he want to be president? And he doesn't sound like he wants to be if he doesn't say, I want to be president. You don't wonder about who's running against you or who you think deserves it or all that. You say, do I want to be president? Then I have to run. That's how it works. So I don't really believe Gavin Newsom. I just don't believe what he said.
When you say that Biden needs to be doing other moves, what would you suggest him do?
I would bring in a very strong Secretary of the Treasury who can get on television and Meet the Press every Sunday and every one of the talk shows and be very strong on the economy with a recognized economic background. He doesn't have a vice president who will talk on the economy. He doesn't have a cabinet that talks on the economy. He's out there all alone. And that makes, he looks weak. because he's all alone. If you're the only person saying the economy's in good shape, you're not going to be believed. And by the way, Kamala could be doing so much better for herself. I have never met, and I've met her in the back room, and you can actually talk casually with a politician. You all know they're different when they get in the back room or in the green room, whatever. And they talk with a natural conversational voice. She's very likable and thoughtful. And she speculates and she thinks. I think she talks too much as a prosecutor, not as a person telling her story. What was it like growing up with an Indian mother, with a tiger mother? What was that like? What was it like having a father from the Caribbean? What was that like? What was it like? What was it about your decision to go to Howard University? That was a very strong statement to join the Black culture in a sense and say, I'm running as a Black woman. Talk about that. Talk about how you sort of oriented yourself socially and politically and why you did that. And tell us more about yourself. And people would come there and say, yeah, I can't imagine living like that, but I get it. I think I know what she's been through. Talk in a way that makes people want to be compassionate toward you. It is so basic to politics. And I don't know how she's come this far from district attorney to attorney general to U.S. senator to vice president without at least beginning to do that.
Donald Trump continues to dominate in the polls, even though new polls this week showed that other candidates like Nikki Haley would actually do better against Joe Biden. Can Donald Trump be stopped in the GOP primary?
They're not going to have any action on the criminal trials till March. By the way, I'm just looking at that mugshot. I think that was an advertisement for Trump, and I don't know why, but it was. It's defiance against the system, against the elite, against the people who went to Ivy League schools, people that think they're better than us. I think there's so much of that, and it's been well earned by the elite. And it's the manner in which people do look down on other people who didn't go to college. And it's for real.
Speaking of elitism, let's talk about the Hardball College Tour. So it has been fun.
Well, that was something.
It was fun to see some of these old pics from the Hardball College Tour making the rounds online. Here is me on the campus of USC. You also did a lot at Harvard, the most elite of all places.
There you are.
Yeah, there I am. A young Pete Buttigieg asking a question here, who, of course, is now the transportation secretary. We've got Vivek Ramaswamy at Harvard. He's now a Republican presidential candidate. What goes through your mind when you see these images of all these people that you influenced who are now, you know, among the top leaders in the country?
Like yourself. Well, I'll tell you, what I do impressed by how it makes it mean a whole era has transpired during the time these people have gone ahead. And maybe you were stimulated by reading what I've written or what I was showing. But I really did the college tour for that reason. And we had the school bands. We always had the school band playing. You remember the rah-rah part? Yeah. It was a lot of rah-rah, a lot of excitement about the band and everything exciting. It wasn't that we just came in and were intellectual. We brought the fun of politics to the campus. And that's what I'm glad I could do that.
When Pete Buttigieg was running for president, we set up an event at USC inspired by the Hardball College Tour and did a back and forth with people to try to imitate what you did, both of us from that next generation. We want to have more with Chris after this. We'll have you tell me something I don't know, which is your old bit. But we go to break with one of the greatest clips in the history of cable news when an annoyed Senator Zell Miller said this to Chris.
I wish we lived in the day where you could challenge a person to a duel. Now, that would be pretty good.
All right, Donald, tell me something I don't know.
Chris Matthews used to ask his guests on the Chris Matthews Show and Hardball to tell me something I don't know, scoops and predictions from his panelists. Well, Chris is back with us. So, Chris, let's flip the script. Chris Matthews, tell me something I don't know.
Okay, Trump's going to name the governor of South Dakota as his running mate.
That would be Kristi Noem, who has been talked about a lot, and you think that she will be the running mate. Why? He doesn't want
any trouble from anybody. He wants somebody who's with him from the beginning, is never, always constant. He doesn't want to have somebody that might have a different opinion, like Nikki Haley. He doesn't want to have any arguments. He wants somebody who's with him.
Yeah, and part of the advantage of her, if you're thinking about TV, having a attractive younger woman next to you makes you look younger as compared to having a younger man next to you may make you look older. Not that
You're
Trump
so
is
smart
thinking about TV producing it all.
You are so smart. Remember how Dan Quayle made George Herbert Walker Bush look really smart? and deliberate.
Yeah, Kamala Harris.
Compared to Dave Quayle.
Kamala Harris looked like Joe Biden's co-anchor instead of if he would have picked Pete Buttigieg, he would have looked like his grandson. Okay, not that Trump ever thinks like a TV producer.
Christy, no, we got it. We nailed it.
We play a game called Personal Issues on our show. This is 30 seconds, rapid-fire questions to get to know you. This is the first thing that comes to your mind about some of your cultural favorites, because we know as much as you love politics, you may love movies just as much. So, Chris, what is your favorite movie of all time?
Lawrence of Arabia.
What is the favorite movie you've watched recently?
Taken, with Liam Neeson. It's good.
Favorite TV show you recently binged?
Definitely binging Downton Abbey. I am still binging it again. I do it every summer.
Best book you recently read?
Actually, I'm reading a book by a guy who was in the Peace Corps with me, and Ron Pierce wrote it, and it's the best book I've read in a long time, and I'm just looking at the manuscript. It's fabulous. But normally, I would like The Fountainhead. I like The Fountainhead. I like Gatsby. I like the basics, the odds, the favorite ones. Very nice.
Chris, we love music on this show, so we're going to go to break with music from Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. We wish Bruce well as he recovers from a medical issue for the next few weeks. Chris, thank you so much for doing our show.
It's been great. It's been a great show. Thank you.
And we hope you'll come visit us.
I love your clips.
I hope you'll come visit us when you're here in LA sometime. We'd love to have you in our studio.
I will. Hey, Will. Thanks a lot. Good luck, Alex.
More of the issue is when we come back. Next week on The Issue Is, we go one-on-one with Democratic presidential candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. We also sit down here in studio with Republican presidential candidate Doug Burgum. We end this week with the issue the country actually cares about the most, the return of the NFL. It is great to have football back. We'll see you next week for more of The Issue Is.